The most important person in the sleek, billion-dollar headquarters of next-gen tech wasn't the CEO. It was the janitor he'd walked past for a year. Until the moment his 5-year-old daughter, who the world believed couldn't hear or speak, ran past a boardroom of executives. She ran straight into the arms of the woman in blue coveralls, who knelt down and began to sign. And in that silent conversation, the entire company's future shattered. Her name is Anya Carter. For 12 months, she cleaned the glass offices of NextGen, invisible by design. The CEO's daughter, Sumin, is deaf. The company spent millions on speech tech, but never learned her language. Until the day the only person who could talk to her was the one they never thought to ask. This is about what we choose not to see, and the moment it becomes impossible to look away. Anya Carter arrived at NextGen with a degree in child development she couldn't use, a mountain of student debt, and a secret fluency in American Sign Language. She got the janitorial job because it offered health insurance and started at 4 a.m., wiping fingerprints from the very glass walls that separated the coders from the cleaners. Her world was empty corridors and the hum of servers. Theirs was stocked fridges and billion-dollar valuations. The rule was simple: be invisible. Finish before the thinkers arrived. But one thinker always arrived early. CEO Kim Min-jun, 38, a man who built an empire by seeing patterns in data that others missed. He would pace in his corner office, whiteboard covered in algorithms, while his driver waited downstairs with his daughter, Sumin. Anya saw them every morning through the lobby glass. The little girl in colorful dresses, holding her father's hand, her eyes taking in a silent world. Min-jun's mission was NextGen's loudest secret project, Project Echo, a $500 million initiative to create the world's first truly predictive speech generation implant for the deaf. He hired the best neurologists, the sharpest AI engineers. He believed technology could give his daughter the voice the world demanded. He never considered learning hers. For Anya, sign language wasn't a skill. It was her first language. Her younger brother, Marcus, was born deaf. She was his bridge to the family, to everything. She fought his teachers, argued with administrators who said he should lip-read, not sign. She taught him to be proud of his hands. He's an artist now. She cleaned offices to pay off the loans from those battles. Her hands, which could debate philosophy in ASL, spent their days squeezing disinfectant onto surfaces. The first crack in the invisible wall happened on a Tuesday in November. Anya was cleaning a conference room named the Zen Pod. Sumin had come upstairs with her father for a rare meeting. Min-jun was distracted, pulled into a crisis call. Sumin, bored, wandered. She found a tablet left unlocked on a table, opened a drawing app, and began to scribble. Then she tried to close it. She tapped the wrong icon. An error message flashed. She tapped again, harder. Frustration built on her small face. She slapped the tablet's screen. Anya, polishing the glass walls, saw it all. She didn't think. She stepped into the pod, knelt a few feet away, and caught Sumin's eye. She raised her own hands slowly, clearly. You, frustrated. Me too, technology, stupid, sometimes. Sumin froze. Her angry tears stopped. She stared at Anya's moving hands like she'd been handed a key in a locked room she'd lived in for 5 years. Tentatively, she signed back. Broken. Yes, broken, Anya signed, then pointed to the window at a bird on a ledge. Bird, pretty. Sumin's face transformed. Not a smile, but the dawn of one. She pointed to the bird, then to her own chest, a questioning look. You pretty too, Anya signed. That was the first conversation. It lasted 47 seconds. Min-jun finished his call, collected his daughter, and left without noticing the janitor in the corner, her heart pounding. But Sumin noticed. The next morning, when her father walked through the lobby, her eyes scanned the space, searching for the blue coveralls. She found Anya emptying a trash bin. Sumin waved, a small, deliberate hand flutter. Anya, after a glance at the distracted CEO, signed back. Good morning. A secret thread was spun. For weeks, it was just glances and basic signs across lobbies and corridors. Hungry, tired, sunny, cold. To Sumin, it was a miracle. A person in her world at last spoke her language. To Anya, it was a fragile, beautiful trespass. She knew the rules, no fraternization, especially not with the founder's family. Then came the day of the Project Echo demo. The entire C-suite gathered in the main auditorium. A young engineer, wired with confidence, presented a prototype headset. It reads neural impulses from the auditory cortex and predicts intended speech with 87% accuracy, he declared. On stage, a deaf adult volunteer tried it. The robotic voice that came out said, "The sky is blue." The room erupted in applause. Min Jun beamed, seeing a future where his daughter would speak in boardrooms. But Ania, cleaning the back row after the crowd left, saw the volunteer backstage. He was signing rapidly to an interpreter, his face agitated. The interpreter translated for a colleague. "It's guessing. It feels like it's putting words in my mouth. I thought bird," it said blue. The cost of this wrong guess was a $500 million round of applause. That afternoon, Ania found Sumin in a small breakout room, a child-sized pair of Project Echo prototype headphones on her ears, connected to a tablet. A therapist was gidding her. "Think of a word, sweetie, any word." Sumin's face was tight with concentration. The tablet screen flickered, then displayed apple. The robotic voice said it. The therapist clapped. "Good job." Sumin pulled the headphones off. She signed, furious, to the therapist, who didn't understand. Ania from the doorway read her hands. "Not apple, dog, I think, dog." The therapist just smiled, patting her head. "We'll try again tomorrow." The moment the therapist left to get water, Sumin's composure broke. She kicked the leg of the table. She was drowning in a world that kept applauding while she screamed underwater. Ania moved before her conscience could stop her. She entered the room, closed the door softly, and knelt. She signed, slow and clear, "I see you, technology, wrong, you not wrong." Sumin threw herself into Ania's arms, not crying, just holding on tightly. For 5 minutes, Ania held her, signing gentle, simple stories about her brother Marcus, about how he painted sunsets with his hands, how his silence was full, not empty. She didn't notice the time. She didn't hear the approaching footsteps in the hall. The door opened. It was Min Jun coming to check on the demo's progress. He saw his daughter in the arms of a janitor. His daughter's hands were moving rapidly, silently talking, and the janitor's hands were talking back. His brain, wired for patterns, seized the data points, the unauthorized interaction, the breach of protocol, the disruption of his expensive, meticulously planned therapy session. His voice was cold, cutting through the silent conversation. "What is going on here?" Ania stood up, her hands falling to her sides. Sumin held on tighter to her coveralls. Minjun's question wasn't a question, it was an audit. "She was upset," Ania said, her voice quiet. "The device guessed wrong, I was just calming her down." With sign language, his statement was flat. He looked from Ania's face to his daughter's hands, which were now signing, rapid and anxious, "Don't go, please." He didn't understand the words, but he understood the fear he'd put there. "You're not authorized for this," he said, his CEO voice locking into place. "You are contracted for cleaning services, not child care, not therapy. You've interfered with a sensitive medical protocol." She was crying, Ania said, the words slipping out. The protocol wasn't listening. That was the wrong thing to say. Minjun's jaw tightened. He knelt and gently pried Sumin's grip from Ania's uniform. He signed a single, clumsy phrase he'd learned from an app. "Sorry, come." He took her hand and led her from the room without looking back. Ania was suspended before her shift ended. The notice came via email from facilities management, pending review for gross misconduct and violation of non-interaction clauses. She was to turn in her keycard immediately. For the first time in a year, she rode the elevator down with the afternoon crowd, feeling every stare. The rumor mill was faster than the fiber optic network. Minjun spent the evening trying to repair the damage. He sat with Sumin, offering the tablet, the headphones, a new interactive game. She pushed it all away. She pointed to the door, to the window, signing the same phrase over and over. "Where, blue lady." He didn't know the sign for janitor. He didn't know the sign for fired. He tried to sign work finish, but his gestures were vague, imprecise. Sumin's frustration turned to a silent, shaking rage. She threw a book. She hid under her bed. The gulf between them, usually papered over with busy schedules and hopeful technology, was now a visible, uncrossable canyon. The next day, Minjun called Ania's contracting firm. His intent was to formalize her termination. The firm's manager, eager to please a client who owned the building, was ready to comply. But Minjun, almost against his will, heard himself asking a different question. Where did she learn sign language? Is it on her resume? A pause, keys clacked. No, sir, nothing like that. Her resume says child development degree, some retail, that's it. A degree, that stopped him. He'd assumed a GED, maybe a community college certificate. He pulled up the security footage from the breakout room the moment he'd missed. He watched it now, devoid of his initial anger. He saw his daughter's tear-streaked face, the violent rejection of the headphones. He saw Anya enter the frame, not with the hesitance of a trespasser, but with the calm certainty of a lifeguard. He saw her kneel. He watched their hands. It wasn't just signs. It was a conversation, a flow. His daughter's posture changed, the tension melting, replaced by focused attention. Then she hugged her. He watched his daughter cling to this woman in blue coveralls as if she were the only solid thing in a spinning room. He called his head of HR, Eva Chen. I need the full employee file for Anya Carter, the janitor, everything. The one who's being terminated. Minjun, we have a process, the contract. Just get it. The file told a story his assumptions had erased. Dean's list. Thesis on language acquisition in deaf children within hearing families. Volunteer work at the Center for Deaf Advocacy. Student debt, $127,000. Her brother's name was listed as emergency contact, Marcus Carter, noted as deaf. Minjun sat back in his chair. The data points rearranged themselves. This wasn't a janitor dabbling in kindness. This was a trained specialist cleaning toilets. His daughter hadn't bonded with a random employee. She had found, in the literal basement of his empire, the exact person he had been searching for in labs and conferences for 3 years. His pride warred with the evidence. Project Echo was the future. It was elegant, scalable, a triumph of engineering. What Anya offered was analog, personal, unscalable. It was a step backward. But his daughter, hiding in her room, refusing to engage with all his forward momentum, was a living rejection of that future. He made a decision, not from empathy but from strategy. He would bring her back, not as a janitor, as a consultant, a temporary measure to stabilize Sumin while Project Echo was refined. He'd pay her, control the interaction, and prove that his machine could eventually replicate what she did. He called the contracting firm again and stopped the termination. He had Eva draft a new, highly unusual independent contractor agreement. When Anya arrived the next morning, expecting to collect her final check, she was met by Eva Chen in the Stark HR office. Eva slid the contract across the table. Mr. Kim is offering you a temporary position as a communication facilitator for his daughter, 20 hours a week, at 4 times your current hourly rate. There are strict NDAs, conduct clauses, and the term is 6 months, after which Project Echo is expected to reach its next milestone. Anya read the cold, legal language. It spelled out her role as a human intervention supplement to a primary technological protocol. She was being hired as a living patch for a buggy system. The money was life-changing. It would erase her debt in a year, but it felt like being paid to be a museum exhibit of something they planned to replace. What about my janitorial job? She asked. That's been terminated. This is the only offer on the table. It was a gilded cage, but inside that cage was Sumin. Anya thought of her brother Marcus. She thought of what access to real language, not approximated speech, had meant for him. She signed the papers. The dynamic shifted instantly. Anya no longer entered through the service entrance. She used the main lobby with a new keycard that granted access to the executive floors. She was given a small, windowless office next to the wellness room. The other cleaners, her former colleagues, avoided her eyes. She had crossed over. Her sessions with Sumin were scheduled, monitored, and recorded. Minjun often watched from his office via the internal camera feed. He saw Anya work without the tablet, without the headphones. She used books, pictures, toys. She taught Sumin signs for concepts the AI hadn't catalogued: FOMO, annoying, sarcasm, brave. She taught her how to tell a joke in ASL. The first time Sumin signed a joke, and then, understanding the punchline, laughed a real, soundless laugh that shook her shoulders, Minjun felt a strange ache in his chest. It was a sound he'd never heard, but he could see the joy of it. It was nothing like the robotic, ha-ha, the Echo prototype could generate. Meanwhile, Project Echo was failing its internal benchmarks. The more data they collected, the more the engineers realized the problem wasn't prediction accuracy, but meaning. The machine could guess apple or dog, but it couldn't grasp why a child might be thinking of a dog while looking at an apple, because the dog's name was Apple. The human context was infinite, messy. Anya provided that context effortlessly. The Project Echo team began requesting summaries of her sessions. They were trying to reverse engineer her intuition. Minjun found himself in a silent war with his own company. His stated goal was to make Anya obsolete. His hidden action was funding the team that studied her. He started joining the sessions, not as CEO, but as a father. He'd sit in the corner, trying to follow the signs. Anya would slow down, translate. She's telling you about the dream she had, the one with the flying turtle. Why a turtle? Anya assigned the question to Sumin, who responded with a flurry of gestures. Anya smiled. She says because turtles are slow, so if one can fly, it means anything is possible. She says you work too fast, be more turtle. Minjun almost laughed. Then Sumin signed something directly to him, her expression serious. He looked to Anya. She wants to know if you're learning, Anya translated, her own voice softening. She wants to know if you'll ever talk with her, for real. The question hung in the air. It was the core of it all. Was he building a machine to speak for her, or was he willing to learn how to listen? He had no answer. He left the room. The tension found its way to the board. Simon Price, the lead investor, a man who saw children as future market demographics, got wind of the janitor consultant. He requested a quarterly review of Project Echo. The presentation was a disaster. The charts were flatlining. When Price asked about the unforeseen human variable costs, Minjun defended the approach, citing user-centric iteration. Price leaned back, skeptical. Our exit strategy is a billion-dollar medical device, not a nanny service. The market wants a chip, not a charm school. This Anya Carter, she's a crutch, and crutch manufacturers don't get tech valuations. After the meeting, Minjun's head of security delivered a separate report. It was a standard background check refresh on Anya Carter. Most of it was clean, but there was a new footnote: activist ties. Her brother Marcus was a prominent organizer in the deaf community, currently involved in protests against a biotech firm called NeuroSync, a firm that was, Minjun knew, a direct competitor and a potential acquisition target for NextGen's medical division. The report included a photo from a protest. Marcus Carter held a sign that read, "Our language is not a bug to be fixed." Standing right beside him, her face determined, was Anya. Minjun stared at the photo. The woman teaching his daughter, the woman on his payroll, was publicly aligned with a movement whose core philosophy was a direct threat to his life's work, to Project Echo itself. Was this a coincidence, or had she and her brother seen a way inside the fortress of the very industry they opposed? Minjun didn't confront Anya, not directly. Instead, he had her access logs pulled and her session recordings scrubbed for any sign of subversion. He found nothing but patient lessons and a child coming alive. But the photo was a seed of doubt, and in the sterile soil of a boardroom, it grew into a conspiracy. He called his head of security. "I want a full workup on her brother's group, their funding, their targets, their methods." The report came back 24 hours later. Marcus Carter's group, Deaf First, was grassroots, poorly funded and principled. Their target was NextGen. It was NeuroSync, the competitor. But the report included a leaked internal memo from NeuroSync's CEO. It read, "The Deaf First protests are a market opportunity. It shows the emotional consumer bias against pure tech solutions. Our acquisition by NextGen must emphasize the human-in-the-loop model to appease this sentiment." Minjun read the line twice. Acquisition by NextGen. He had heard rumors, but the board's M&A committee, led by Simon Price, operated in a silo he didn't control. He confronted Price in a private call. "Is NeuroSync a target?" "A potential one. Their neural lace patent could bypass Echo's prediction errors. We buy them, we own the next generation. The protests are a nuisance, but they help us. They make NeuroSync look bad and cheap." "And the human-in-the-loop model?" Price chuckled. "A narrative, Minjun. We'll say we're combining the best of tech and human touch. Your little janitor experiment is actually perfect cover. We can point to her and say, see, we value the human element. Then we phase her out and sell the combined tech. It's elegant. Min-jun felt the trap click shut. Anya wasn't a spy, she was a prop, and he had been using her, even in his suspicion, exactly as Price intended. The moral high ground he thought he occupied had been a stage set all along. He went to Anya's windowless office. She was preparing picture cards for the next day's session. He stood in the doorway, the report in his hand. Your brother, he's protesting NeuroSync. Anya looked up, wary. Yes. Did you know Next Gen is planning to acquire them? She went very still. The color drained from her face. That was answer enough. She hadn't known, but she saw the implication immediately. You think I'm here to, what? Sabotage the acquisition by being bad at my job. I think movements need martyrs. What better martyr than a sister, fired from the evil tech giant for teaching sign language right before it buys the company they hate? Anya stood up, her hands flat on the desk. My brother doesn't know I work here. I never told him. He thinks I'm still cleaning offices at the university. I kept it that way to protect him from this exact paranoid thought. Her voice cracked with a mix of anger and exhaustion. Sumin is not a political statement. She is a little girl, and you are so desperate to find a grand chess game that you're missing the actual person right in front of you. Again. She picked up her bag. Our session is over for today. Anya, wait. But she was gone. The confrontation leaked, as things in glass offices do. A sanitized version reached Simon Price, the CEO and the consultant, in a heated argument about her activist ties. Price saw his opening. He called an emergency board meeting, framing it as a critical governance issue. The presentation was brutal. Slides showed the protest photo, Marcus Carter's Deaf First manifesto, and the words embedded activist in red text. Price argued that Anya was a reputational time bomb, and her continued presence jeopardized the NeuroSync acquisition, and by extension, the entire future of Project Echo. Sentiment is a weapon, Price stated, and right now, we've handed the weapon to our opponents. She must be terminated, immediately and publicly. We issue a statement. We support innovation for the deaf community, but we cannot condone activist employees seeking to undermine from within. Min-jun fought. He cited Sumin's progress, the developmental benchmarks she'd hit. He called it a personal family matter. Price smiled, cold. The company is not your family's therapist. The board has a fiduciary duty. We've taken a vote. The consultant contract is terminated, effective end of day. And Min-jun, we strongly suggest you make a clean break for the company's sake. It was an order. The board had overruled him in his own company. The message was clear. He was CAO in title, but the money was in control. He had to fire her himself. He did it in his office, with Eva Chen from HR present. He recited the board's decision, his eyes on the marble floor between them. Breach of confidentiality, conflict of interest, inability to separate personal activism from professional role. Anya listened, her face a mask. When he finished, she asked only one question. How do you want me to say goodbye to her? Eva Chen interjected. We think a clean break is best. We'll handle the transition with the family. No, Anya said, her eyes locked on Min-jun. He doesn't get to have you do his dirty work. How do you want me to say goodbye to your daughter? Min-jun's voice was hollow. You have 15 minutes. In the playroom, I'll bring her. The goodbye was a quiet devastation. Anya told Sumin she was going away, that she was so proud of her, that she was strong and smart. Sumin's small hands flew, desperate. WHY? Promise, you stay. I can't. Why you are, Dad? Decision. Anya signed, her own hands trembling. Remember, turtle, fly, you fly. Sumin shook her head, crying without sound, and buried her face in Anya's shoulder. Min-jun, watching from the door, felt something in him break. He had just traded his daughter's heart for a board's approval. Anya left the building for the last time. The story, however, was just leaving the building for the first time. Simon Price, true to his word, issued a press release. It was a masterpiece of corporate venom. Next Gen parts ways with consultant over activist conflicts. It mentioned external agendas and the importance of unified mission. It did not mention Sumin. It did not mention sign language. But someone in the HR department, sympathetic to Ania, leaked the real story to a tech journalist. The next day's headline was a sledgehammer: Next Gen fires deaf child sign language teacher after boardroom power play. The article connected the dots: the board, the NeuroSync acquisition, the protests by Ania's brother. It framed her not as an activist, but as a woman caught between a child's needs and a corporation's greed. The public reaction was instantaneous and furious. Social media erupted. Hashtags, let her sign, Sue Min deserves better, deaf rights are human rights. Inside NextGen, chaos. Employees in the deaf and hard of hearing affinity group drafted an open letter of protest. The Project Echo team was demoralized. Their work was now associated with cruelty. Minjun's inbox flooded with resignations from key engineers who cited ethical rot. And Sumin, she shut down completely. She refused to put on the Echo headphones. She stopped signing. She sat in her room, facing the wall, a 5-year-old in a silent, impenetrable strike. The one bridge she had was burned, and she saw the arsonist was her father. The board's response was to double down. They fast-tracked the NeuroSync acquisition. They scheduled a massive, live-streamed product demo for Project Echo, a coming-out party to reset the narrative. They would showcase a deaf child using the technology to speak. They needed Sumin. They told Minjun to make her comply. He couldn't, he tried, he begged. She looked through him as if he were glass. The day of the demo arrived. The glass-walled atrium of NextGen was transformed into a theater. Investors, press, and industry titans filled the seats. Cameras lined the walls. Simon Price was the host, beaming. Minjun stood backstage, a ghost in his own house. Sumin was dressed in a pretty dress, her face blank, a living prop waiting for her cue. Price gave his gleaming speech about the future of inclusive technology. He announced the NeuroSync acquisition. He built to the crescendo. And now, to show you the human heart of our mission, my partner, CEO Kim Minjun, and his inspiring daughter, Sumin. The spotlight found them. Minjun led a listless Sumin to the center of the stage. The Echo headset, sleek and white, was placed on her head. The tablet screen glowed. Price knelt, speaking to the audience as if to a child. Sumin, honey, can you think of a word to show our friends? Any word at all. Sumin stared at the crowd, terrified. She didn't think of a word, she thought of a person. The tablet screen flickered, the AI scrambling. It displayed a jumble of letters, then settled on Lonely. A robotic voice echoed through the atrium, lonely. The audience shifted, uncomfortable. Price forced a laugh. A deep first thought, let's try a happier one, think of something you love. Sumin's eyes scanned the crowd, the lights, the expectant faces. She was drowning. And then she saw her, across the crowded atrium, near the service entrance, holding a cleaning cart. Ania Carter, in blue janitor coveralls. She had been rehired by the desperate facilities manager, her old contract still valid, to help with the extra load of the event. Their eyes met. Sumin's paralysis shattered. She tore the headset off, letting it clatter to the stage. And before her father or anyone could stop her, she ran. She darted past her stunned father, past Simon Price, off the stage, and through the sea of executives and investors in their sleek suits. A tiny girl in a pink dress, running with single-minded purpose toward the one person who spoke her language. The crowd parted in stunned silence as the little girl ran. 100 smartphones lifted, capturing the moment. She didn't stop until she crashed into Ania's legs, wrapping her arms around her, pressing her face into the blue coveralls. Ania, frozen for a second, dropped to her knees. She didn't look at the cameras. She looked only at Sumin. Her hands came up, gentle on the child's back, then began to sign. I am, here you, are safe. On the stage, Minjun stood paralyzed. Simon Price's smile had fossilized into a grimace. The live stream was capturing every second. The narrative of a flawless tech future had just been hijacked by a more powerful story. A child's raw, unscripted need for human connection. Ania stood, holding Sumin on her hip. She turned to face the atrium, the lights, the silent crowd. She saw Minjun on the stage, and something in her settled into a fierce calm. She began to walk, not toward the exit, but toward the stage. The crowd, mesmerized, let her pass. She walked up the steps, Su-min clinging to her, and faced the microphone. She looked at Min-jun, then at Simon Price, then at the sea of faces. "Her name is Su-min," Anya said, her voice clear in the dead silence. "She is 5 years old. She is deaf. And the first word your technology guessed for her was lonely, because that is what you have made her." She shifted Su-min in her arms so the child could see her hands. She signed to her slowly so the cameras could catch it. "Tell them what you need." Su-min, emboldened by the arms holding her, lifted her own small hands. She signed, her movements sure and strong. "I need, my friend, I need, my language." Anya translated aloud, her voice breaking only once. She needs her friend, she needs her language. The dam broke. The applause started not from the investors, but from the next-gen employees in the back. It spread, a rolling wave of sound. It wasn't for a product, it was for a child's courage. Min-jun watched his daughter, who had been silent and scared for weeks, now signing with a clarity and confidence he had never seen. The proof was in her hands, not in a headset. Simon Price moved to the microphone, trying to regain control. "This is an emotional moment, but let's not confuse a child's attachment with." Min-jun stepped forward and took the microphone from Price's hand. The physical gesture, broadcast on every screen, was a transfer of power. He looked at Anya, at his daughter in her arms, and then at his board, his investors, the world. "The board's decision to terminate Anya Carter's contract," he said, his voice low but carrying, "was my failure to uphold. It was wrong. This," he gestured to Su-min, "is the only benchmark that matters. Project Echo is not ready. It may never be ready to give a child what another human being can. We will be refunding all pre-seed investment for the project immediately." The gasps in the room were audible. Price looked apoplectic. The share price, visible on monitors around the room, began to plummet. Min-jun continued, "The proposed acquisition of NeuroSync is hereby cancelled. Our focus, starting today, will be different." He turned to Anya. "If she will accept, I am offering Anya Carter the position of Director of Inclusive Experience, with a mandate to build programs that support deaf and hard-of-hearing children and their families, not with technology that speaks for them, with resources that help the world listen." He wasn't offering her a job, he was offering her his company's future direction. Anya stood there, holding his daughter, absorbing the enormity of it. She looked at Su-min, who signed a single word, "Yes." Anya nodded. "On one condition," she said into the microphone, "I report to a new advisory board, made up of deaf adults, parents of deaf children, and linguists, not investors." "Done," Min-jun said. The fallout was swift and brutal, but it cleaved along a new line. Simon Price and 3 other board members resigned within the hour. The stock drop was severe, but it stabilized when 2 major institutional investors, pressured by their own ESG divisions, issued statements of support for the human-centric pivot. The NeuroSync deal collapsed. Anya didn't go back to cleaning. Her brother Marcus, when he finally learned the full story, didn't protest. He consulted. He joined the advisory board. Project Echo was shelved, its budget reallocated to fund ASL immersion programs in schools and grants for deaf artists. But the real change was in the quiet spaces. Anya's new office had a window and a small child-sized table in the corner. Su-min came after school. Min-jun started taking ASL lessons, not from an app, but from a stern, wonderful old deaf man named Joseph who had no patience for CEOs. He learned slowly, awkwardly, but he learned. One Tuesday afternoon, 3 months after the demo, Min-jun came to Anya's office. Su-min was drawing at the small table. He signed, haltingly, his movements stiff but correct. "Thank you." Anya signed back, "For what?" "For seeing her when I did not." They stood there, a CEO and his director, communicating in his daughter's first language. Su-min looked up from her drawing, saw her father signing, and a smile broke across her face. She ran over and hugged his legs, then signed, fast and excited, about her picture. He struggled to keep up, but he tried. He was trying. The final surprising detail wasn't in the press releases, it was in the code. Before Project Echo was shut down, Ania had requested all its data, not the speech prediction algorithms, but the raw neural patterns recorded while deaf users tried to communicate. She gave the data, anonymized, to a team of neuroscientists and deaf coders. Their project, called Bridge, didn't try to generate speech. It tried to visualize, in stunning real-time animation, the complexity and beauty of signed thought. It was a tool for hearing parents to see the rich, conceptual world forming in their deaf child's mind. The first prototype was tested with Minjun and Sumin. He watched as her signs, captured by a camera, blossomed on a screen into swirling colors and shapes, a visual poem of her inner world. He finally saw what she had been thinking all along. He cried. Ania Carter came to Next Gen with a degree she couldn't use and hands that spoke a language no one listened for. She cleaned glass walls that reflected a world that refused to see her. Then a little girl, silent in a tower of noise, ran toward her. And in that run, a billion-dollar future cracked open, not to destroy it, but to make room for something older, something simpler, something more profound. Connection, not manufactured, not scaled, earned. Sign by sign, word by word, in the space between a held breath and hands that speak. So what is the lesson written in the air between those moving hands? It's not that technology is bad. It's that humanity is not a problem to be solved with a better algorithm. The greatest interface we will ever design is not on a screen. It is the space between two people, the willingness to lean in, to be clumsy, to learn a language you were never required to learn. Ania Carter's story went viral because it mirrors a quiet fear in all of us. The fear that our deepest value might be overlooked by a world that categorizes too quickly. The janitor, the deaf child, the CEO in his glass tower, each trapped in a story someone else wrote for them. Freedom came not from breaking the glass, but from someone finally seeing clearly through it. We build empires of efficiency. We optimize, we scale, we predict. But some things refuse to be optimized. Love refuses. Understanding refuses. The journey of a child's mind from lonely to laughing refuses to be a straight line on a graph. What Ania offered, what Sumin reached for, was the messy, glorious, inefficient art of real connection. It doesn't scale, and that is precisely why it is priceless. Look around your own world, at the people you pass without seeing, whose hands hold skills you haven't thought to ask about, whose silence you haven't thought to listen to. The most important person in the room is rarely the one shouting the loudest. Often, it is the one who hasn't been given the microphone, but who holds the translation for a language you don't yet know. The future belongs not to those who build the smartest walls, but to those who are brave enough to leave a door open and humble enough to walk through it when someone on the other side says, in a language they've just learned, "I see you." Stay curious, stay listening, and if you want more stories that look beyond the surface, consider subscribing. We'll see you in the next one.